If you're a parent, teacher, or school leader, and you're sick and tired of the frustration, anger, and unfair treatment of children at high risk in our public schools, then perhaps it's time for all of us to do something about it. In this podcast, Dr. Amitra Berry brings you tips, tools, strategies, and tactics to build successful solutions while touching, moving, and inspiring all of us to transform our schools so that every child thrives. Here's your host, Dr. Berry.
Welcome back, Equity Warriors. Great to have you here. You've tuned into Educational Equity for Emancipation, where we break down the barriers in education and champion equal opportunities for all learners. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and let's keep this conversation going. My guest today is Shauna Wells, an educator dedicated to bridging resource gaps for Black learners. As an executive coach and legacy architect, she leads 7Gen Legacy Group, guiding families towards intergenerational success. Her children's initiative, B is for Black Brilliance, amplifies the creativity of Black youth. Serving on boards such as the Highland Project, Shauna is a formidable advocate for educational equity. Shauna, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning or afternoon, I guess. No, it's good morning for you. Good morning.
Yeah. And who knows what time people will be listening to this in, right?
Yes.
So I want to start by having you tell us, what is the B is for Black Brilliance initiative?
Yes. So as you shared, I'm an executive coach, and I was really thinking about what makes people come to executive coaching. People come to executive coaching to explore the ways that they are enough and the ways that they arrive to their own brilliance. B is for Black Brilliance was birthed out of the reality that we wait too long, particularly as Black women, to realize our own brilliance. And so in 2020, as I was working to heal, as I think we all were trying to figure out how to heal in our own ways, I started to write down the names of Black and brilliant humans that I knew in my life that impacted my storyline. And then I started asking the women that I coached, the Black women that I coached, to start sharing names. And what happened is we came up with a list of thousands of names. I have the paper still. And what I realized is, I wonder if all of these people knew how brilliant we see them. And what would happen if they knew about their brilliance at 2 or 3 or 5? And so B is for Black Brilliance was founded because what I noticed about the narrative that we tell about ourselves and people tell about us is that it's told through the lens of exceptionality and through the lens of sacrifice and through the lens of struggle. And so we flipped it on its head. We said, what if we tell our story through the lens of brilliance? And we do that early, and we do it often, and we do it alongside caregivers who are raising the next generation, so that when the call comes, because it will come again, to truly disrupt how society sees us, we're equipped with the confidence we need to be able to say, like, no, that ain't me, right? Like, I am brilliant and I have what I need. So B is for Black Brilliance is an organization that centers Black brilliance. We have a curriculum that we use with caregivers called the Legacy of Liberation to have different kinds of dialogues with our kids as the generation who is raising the next generation of activists and advocates. And we learn as we go, but we build from a place of brilliance as opposed to building from a place of not being enough.
More that what came to my mind is that we are too often viewed through a deficit lens. I've often remarked, why is it that, especially when I was younger, people, and I'll clarify, white people would say, you're so articulate.
Yes.
And I learned very early on that that was sort of a backhanded comment. And I didn't quite understand why, but I knew I never heard them say that about white children. A lot of my friends who I knew were just as smart as I was, right? And perhaps just as well spoken as I was. Why was I the articulate one? And as I grew and came to understand, it's that sort of deep-seated or implicit bias that people of color, Black children, are not supposed to be smart. And so when you meet one that is, excuse me, it's a bit of an exception to the rule.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't agree more. And actually, when you go back in time and look at the narratives that were built around us from, um, you know, in the early years, they were meant
Hmm.
to push us down, right? They
Yeah.
were meant to have us be less than our brilliant selves. And in spite of that, we triumphed, right?
Right.
And part of our work now is to take back the narratives that are rightfully ours and be able to clearly share that me just being here is actually really brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Me and
Yeah.
my creation and my creative self, um, whether I'm articulate or not, uh, like I'm not pretty for a Black girl. I'm pretty,
You're
period.
pretty. Yeah.
Right. And so I want our kids to be able to say, like, I'm not smart for a Black kid. I am
Just
smart.
smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think one of the sort of a side effect of that, I'll call it that, and is that creation and the continuation within our own people of, I call it a plantation mindset, right? So even we as Black people have come to believe that when one of us is exceptional, air quotes around that it's different. They're not supposed to be. They're unique. When we all have so much ingenuity and intellect and brilliance, we've just kept ourselves on the plantation by believing that narrative that we are not brilliant and that the few who are, oh, look at them. They're the shining example because most of you are not like this.
yes. Okay. Well, so this makes me think about, I went to the Beyonce concert this summer, as
Mhm.
we all did. Did you go?
No,
Okay. So let me put you in
I'm
the.
old. I'm going to do this. I'm old. Yeah,
I
she's.
know it. I know it. It's like a whole like
I
sister.
did go see Lettucey. I went to see Lettucey this past weekend.
You did. You're the third
Yes.
person that has said this to me.
And we'll see Frankie Beverly in his absolute last tour this weekend.
That is beautiful. And Lauryn Hill's here, so we can bring all of them into it, right?
Yeah.
As we hear people talk about, the the Beyoncés of the world or the Lauryn Hills
Mhm.
of the world or anyone really, the way that it gets spoken about is like, it's impossible that this occurred. I can't believe it. And I walked away from the Beyonce concert this summer. People said, "What did you think?" And listen, like, sis is a genius, right? She's
Mhm.
done work. And I said anybody could be Beyonce.
Yeah.
Anybody could be Beyonce, right? Because we all saw
Yeah.
her in Destiny's Child. Sis was
Mhm.
not Beyonce, right? She
Yep.
had to work and apply and bring her own brilliance, center her own brilliance, talk to herself, talk to the people around her, build her work
Mhm.
that centered who she was and her own brilliance as a fellow Virgo, right? And the fact that we've made it so special to be her is actually a detriment to us.
Yes.
And we're doing it to ourselves.
Yep.
And so the hope is that we can start to talk about ourselves as, the brilliance I bring to the table is this. And the brilliance you bring to the table is this. And we can recognize both of our brilliances together and move
Mhm.
forward as a collective. We're just not used to talking to each other like that.
No, we're not. We're not. And that goes to that, like, as we're wrapping around this plantation mindset, that we have been taught to believe that we are not that.
Yes,
We've been, and we bought the big lie.
we bought the big lie.
Yeah. Let's shift just a little bit. This is all about education. But part of the reason I believe, or one of the reasons I believe that this can continue to happen is because of sort of a barrier to equitable education for Black children. Um, so, in your work, what have you found to be effective in addressing some of those barriers?
Yes. So I am an educator. I was a teacher and a principal and a systems leader. And I think what I know I've seen over time is the erasure of our storylines,
Mhm.
of the things that have created the brilliance of our own humanity, which then creates an inequitable result, right? We actually are putting in an equitable mindset when we build our systems. And so they're not
Mhm.
human centered.
No.
Like, they're not centered on us. And so when you come out with something that is less than helpful, it's not surprising, right? It's not surprising that it's not built in the way that our humanity needs, because when schools were built, they were built without us, right? They were
They were
built,
not built for us.
right? Like
Right.
not even considered. We were not
No.
even supposed to set foot in there.
No.
And yet we continue to build schools and school systems. And I have a strong belief in education and learning, right? But we continue to build schools and school systems on top of a very problematic mindset that we are less than.
Mhm.
And so as we think about how change happens, I'm not surprised that when people called for change, equitable change, right? In the last, whatever you want to call what happened to all of us,
Yeah.
that it didn't work, right? And it didn't stick. And that the people didn't know what to do with it because the mindset never changed. It never shifted. So as I think about my own work, we do mindset work, and we do it outside of that system of the traditional school system. We do it
Mhm.
alongside caregivers who are parents and teachers and aunties and uncles and grandmothers that receive kids as they come, and village leaders and, Girl Scout leaders and all of these folks that are educating our children in different ways, right? Studies show that most kids learn how to, like, about their brilliance and their Blackness from people outside of school.
Yes.
And to
Yeah.
me, that's an inequity.
Yeah. Because so one of the things, I can't remember if we talked about this before, one of the things I do is reviewing instructional materials for publishers before they publish the materials, right? And that review is through an equity lens or an equity mindset. So looking to see, as you're saying, that we're learning about, or Black children are learning about, and brown children learning about their brilliance from outside of the school system. They learn about it from home, from the neighborhood, from community, from church, but they're not learning about it in school, which is where they spend the majority of their learning hours. So when I look at instructional materials for publishers, one of the things I'm looking for is representation.
Yes.
And can every child see themselves in that content? If we're talking poetry, is there poetry by diverse authors? If we're talking history, what lens is it told from? Is it a very white centric lens? In the sciences, one of the things that I found troubling in the sciences, and thank goodness I get to work with publishers who are open to changing what they have so that it is appropriate, is a white savior mentality.
Yes.
Right? So why is it that every time you talk about a scientist, and I said to one, why is it in discussion, we're writing curriculum during COVID, and we know that the brilliance behind the vaccine, or one of the vaccines, was a Black woman, right? So why is all of this biology and all the advances talked about in your biology content white men who have saved Black people in Africa? And why are we not talking about the Black woman who literally is saving American lives right now while we're developing this?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So we need children to learn, not just, it's wonderful, and we need to continue to teach them in our communities. As growing up, I had friends who were Japanese who went to Japanese school after school to learn
Yeah.
about their contributions and their history. My Jewish friends who went to Hebrew school after school. My Chinese friends went to Chinese school. But why did the Black kids not have Black school
Right.
after school?
Right. Right. This hit my heart, as you were saying, right? Because this is the thing that we have to, I think we are obligated as this generation of Black living ancestors. We get to say, no, it's time to learn about our Blackness in a new way, and we can dictate that narrative. The publisher that strikes me the most is, like, everybody knows the Red Dog, right? It's a $1.9 billion company
Mhm.
that gives our kids the opportunity to buy books. Thank you for that. And also,
Mhm.
it's not diverse enough. And we're not having the conversations we need to have around, how do I, as a parent or a caregiver, instill I hope my kids demands that we don't have enough Black faces in this
Yeah.
curriculum. I hope I can teach them to do that. Um, and we're relying on systems to teach what we know needs to be taught. And that's not going to work for us. It never has, right? We've
Yeah.
tried. and it's not working. And so how do we approach it differently to think about from age 0, the conversations that we have, the pictures we hang in our homes, the people that we hold up as brilliant, and the things we accept or don't accept. I'll tell you a quick story about my daughter's school, which I love my daughter's school. So there's a tension here as I share this story. She came home with an assignment, and it was a famous Americans assignment. And she had to share as a 5-year-old, 5 facts about an American, like a famous American.
Okay.
You know what I did when I read the list. I was like, how many Black names are on the list? Right. So first I went through, I was like, okay, the warriors of our history, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, there were folks on there, but it was all history. Black Brilliance lives today, right now, as you said, there are people making amazing contributions to the way that we live in society. And not only was it history, but I also came across the name Robert E. Lee.
Ooh, okay.
On the list.
Yeah. And just so our listeners know, what state are you in?
I'm in the state of Nevada.
So you are not in a deep red state in the South.
That's right.
Okay.
And so here's a school that is well-intentioned, that has cared for my child since she was, like early aged. I trust them with her every single day. They exude great care for her. So I will, they really do. But they put a list out, and I know the situation, right? Tired teacher picks out the list that's always been used, makes a copy, and you could tell it was copied 1,000 times, right? It's a sideways copy.
Yeah.
And we brought it to them and we said, this list is not, our daughter will not do this assignment unless you change, right? You can give her an alternative assignment, but she will not do this assignment unless we need the list changed. And they said, you're right. We've been using the same list for 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
Right. And so again, well-intentioned humans that are very busy, that are trying to do the best they can with what they got. I can give them that in generosity, right? And also, you didn't stop in your tracks when you looked at this list.
Hey there, Equity Warriors. I want to take a quick moment to share something exciting with you. You know how passionate I am about equity in education, right? Well, I've created a special space, a safe space, where we can dive even deeper into these crucial topics. It's our Patreon channel, and I'd love for you to join me there. Here's why it's so awesome. As a Patreon subscriber, you'll get access to exclusive content that I will not share anywhere else. I'm talking additional insights, workshops like you would get in regular professional learning sessions, resources that can really amplify your impact in education. But it's more than just extra content. By subscribing, you are directly supporting our mission. You're helping to create more valuable discussions and resources that you've come to love. You're part of the change we're making in educational systems. And let me tell you, our Patreon community, it is something special. It's a place where passionate educators and advocates can come together, share ideas, and drive real change. So if you're ready to take your commitment to educational equity to the next level, I'd be thrilled to have you join me. Just head over to patreon.com/3E podcast. That's patreon.com/3E podcast. Remember, your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue this important work. Together, we can create the educational system all our students deserve. Thanks for considering, and now let's get back to the episode. Because deep down, they saw nothing wrong with it.
Because deep down, they were like, it's what we've always done. And so, that's why I think the inequity actually exists in the mind, right? Because if I saw them on the street and I dropped my groceries, they would pick it up, right? Yeah. They would help me. But the opportunity to take someone who demoralized the humans that my ancestors off a list is just as important as you helping me today, right? And so I believe, and we believe at BS for Black Brilliance, the work has to be done in the mind to have you make a different choice. Like, how do we get people to come up against a choice point and make a different one.
Yeah. By another name, they would call that being an anti-racist and an ally, not someone who says, I'm not a racist,
Right.
right? So someone who's ready to stand up and take action. You're a teacher, been a teacher, educator, principal. You're also an author.
Mhm.
So we have that in common. I was never a principal, teacher, educator, author. Yeah, never wanted that administrative duty. But I wanted to, it's like way too much responsibility for me. But I want to talk about books and specifically book bans. I pulled some numbers this morning from PEN America because I wanted to have my facts straight. Over the last 2 years, so from July 2021 to 2023, that's the last count that they've done at PEN America, 5,894 instances of book bans in schools in the US. 41 states out of 50 have banned books. My two favorites, Texas and Florida, the anti-equity gifts that just keep on giving, lead the list with the most bans. Authors, illustrators, and translators impacted by those bans, 2,598 human beings whose work is being banned from schools. Number one target, of course, we know stories about people of color, particularly Black folks, dead center in that bullseye, followed by LGBTQIA. Keep my initials straight. Your thoughts, book bans, and who's getting hit by these?
I mean, those, first of all, those statistics to me are staggering because it isn't just the number, the 2,000 number, right? It's all of the people behind those people to get the book to be published. Like the amount of work, as you know, it takes for an author to get their words in front of an audience it takes a village, right?
Yeah. There's a lot. I think I just sent a book off to publisher. I don't know. It's been about a month now, but between my front person that I dealt with, my first editor, now the second editor who puts another set of eyes to it, the marketing people, the people who go out and sell it, the people in the bookstores who are dealing with. I mean, you're talking about an economy that's being impacted. It's an entire economy that's being impacted, and that's jobs. And those jobs don't have colors on them, or genders, or sexual preference to them. They are human beings that are being impacted by this hate.
Yes, real human lives that, because we cannot accept that voices across the spectrum of, and they're new voices, right, that are being allowed to sit in power. We cannot accept that they can and need power and need to be able to have a place in our kids' minds. We're impacting an entire ecosystem. So something we often say at BS for Black Brilliance is like, you can ban our books, but you can't ban our minds.
There you go.
And so, like, one, I can't wait to make the book ban list with BS for Black Brilliance. I'm like, oh, please do it, please, you know. And I do think we get to take that narrative back, right? Here's an example of being able to take the narrative back. Okay, ban our books. You cannot ban the conversation I have with my child in my home about the Black and Brilliant thing that they did, or the Black and Brilliant person that created everything from the hairbrush to the light to the stoplight. You can't ban my conversation that I have with them on the way to school in the car.
Right.
And then that next generation gets to demands like, I don't want to read this book. I don't want to do this assignment, right? There is power in organizing. So while I want to flip tables when I hear about book banning, I also, want to be a part of the book ban. I'm like, yeah, put me on that list.
Yeah, please bring it.
Please bring your hate. I'll turn it into love, right?
Yeah.
And also, I want us to I really want, like, my call to action always is, we're reliant on an institution to do something it has never done. So we need to be able to say, okay, let's take matters into our own hands. And we have plenty of ancestors that try to do that. I think in this generation, we now have the resources, the time, and the capacity to build our own enclaves of conversation that change the mindset from being less than to being greater than.
Yeah. Well, here's to your books being banned.
Here's to your books being published. Let's get on the same list.
Hey, I'm there. I'm there. Maybe my new one will get banned as it's released, and that'll boost sales. It's like anything else. I say when you tell kids don't do that, what's the first thing they do?
They do it.
They do that. It's like, why shouldn't I do that? That just, especially those curious ones, they want to know. So, all right.
Yes.
Financial literacy. One of the conversations that I have with folks talking about generational wealth, a conversation no one ever had with me until I was, I want to say probably 45 to 50, right? Wasn't a conversation that was had. There is a lack of financial literacy. I think it's a critical literacy, and it's not generally taught in K-12 public schools. I only know of one state, and I hate to say it, I don't know if it's still in the standards, but the one state that I know had financial literacy in their standards, at least for high school, was Florida. I don't know if it's still there. That was a while ago. But that critical literacy is not being taught. So here's my theory. And you tear it apart or add to it. I think that the whole thing about not teaching financial literacy is that it continues to support America's caste system. And there's an assurance there that if we are not literate financially, that there will be a group of people who forever will be in that manual labor caste because they don't know how to manage their finances and build wealth. What do you think?
Oh, I'm double underlining and would build on the idea that it's also a mindset piece, right? To me, money is data, right? It tells me how I can live my life and have the freedom that I want to have. And if we don't know how to invest it, to build it, to talk about it, to move it, we certainly can't create systems or initiatives or self-publish books or build companies because you need capital to do that.
Right.
And when you do those things, you start to be able to move power around, right? When you can own more property, you get to occupy then more rights to your land, which then can shift a whole community. And I think for us, it's been about trying to maintain. I'm gonna just maintain, right? I have relatives that are like, I'm just trying to maintain. And I'm like, but maintaining means your survival. It does not mean the survival or the thriving of the next generation to come. I grew up in mostly white spaces, and I can tell you, when I would observe my friends' families having conversations, they were always talking about money. They're talking about sports. They're talking about money. They're talking about the weather. They're talking about money. They're talking about their vacation. They are talking about money. That wasn't always true in my household, right? And so I didn't learn until later in life, oh, well, if I move this here and I put this over here and I have a vision for how I want to move this forward, I can not only accumulate wealth, I can accumulate power. And I'm not power hungry, right? But I do want to be able to walk into my child's school and say, she's not doing this assignment.
Yeah.
That's power, right? And I want to be able to offer a place where teachers and principals and Black women can thrive, right? That's power.
Yeah.
And we need it if we're going to really change how we acknowledge, celebrate, amplify our own brilliance.
Yeah. We have listeners know. I have a grandson who is 16 now. And one of the things we did, a lot of families do, they have the bowl with where, dad, grandpa, whoever's dumping their change in. So my husband was always dumping his change back when people actually carried cash. And there's no more change. Yeah, what's change? What's change? Actually, I have a quarter sitting here and I don't know what to do with it anymore. But when he was, I don't know, probably 7 or 8, one summer when he was with us, we said, you know what, you've got this big bowl of change in here. You need to open a bank account. And so we had that conversation about why a bank account, a savings account, whatnot. And we went to the bank. He went to the bank. Now, we knew, because my husband works in finance, you can't go in with a bag of coins and say, here, I want to open an account. But it was an exercise. Yeah. We took him to the bank. He had his bag of coins, and they said, you need to roll the coins. We did the little wink. We kind of knew. So they gave him all the wrappers and he went back home and he sat on the floor for, I think, hours sorting all his coins. Now, he's been sorting stuff since he was 2, math kid,
Yeah.
loves to sort things. So he sorted all his coins, filled up his little rolls, wrote his name and everything on them, took them back to the bank the next day and opened his account.
Mm.
And we said, all you have to do is let it sit. And when you get a check for your birthday or whatever, add to it. Now, of course, we've done the whatever it is, $5 per paycheck or whatever it is, just adding to it constantly. And every once in a while, we'll say, do you know how much money is in your college savings account?
Mm.
Do you know how much money is in your regular savings account? And we'll send them, pull it up on the website and give them the paper and say, what did you do? And he understood very early on, I left it alone.
I left it alone.
I added to it, I left it alone, and it grows. And once he was old enough to understand the concept of compounded interest, he was good because then he started asking the questions. How much will I have in this many years, right? In years, not days, not months, not I want to go buy whatever the new gaming console is, but how much will I have in this many years or this many months? And what do I have to do to get to this point? I think when we get children interested in money that way early and they can see a bigger picture and a future from letting it ride, that it becomes a whole lot better than I just need $200. I don't know how much a gaming console costs. I just need $200 for the new Nintendo. I don't even know if Nintendo is still a thing. My baby is 32. I am beyond having to worry about what gaming console is out there. But that just a single lesson
Yes.
in literacy, in financial literacy, goes a long way. Now, what if every child in America got it in kindergarten as part of the regular curriculum all the way up through 12th grade?
Yes.
Especially those of us who don't have, or those children who don't have parents with financial literacy to have those conversations at home.
Yes. Well, and you said a single lesson, but really it was a set of habits, right? Like you were building, you were by just asking the question. I think what we don't realize is by just asking the question, we are putting, if you never ask the question, it never begs an answer, right? We're planting a seed that we may never see grow when we ask a question of a child because they're so curious. They're taking, their neuroplasticity is on fire, right? So they're taking in those questions and remembering them over the course of their lifetime. Now, let me share this with you. I would love to hear your reaction. So the work we do at our other company, 7Gen, which is the umbrella company for BS for Black Brilliance. BS for Black Brilliance is part of the legacy I aim to leave, both financially and institutionally.
Awesome.
So the work of 7Gen is to really work alongside leaders to think about what's the legacy I aim to leave. And we talk about legacy in 6 ways. Only one of the ways is financial freedom. The other is play, relationships, community, service, work, well-being. And the thing I find people attracted to most often is like, I want to be financially free. And we talk a lot about the financial legacy we want to leave because I think it's really tangible.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the legacy we want to leave at large, right? Do you have to be wealthy to leave a legacy? Do you have to have money to leave a legacy? Right? No, right?
No. It may help in terms of, as I'm thinking about what you're saying, in terms of time, right? If I'm not having to work, slave, whatever, 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week to put food on the table, then I have the time and the cognitive capacity to think about volunteering somewhere, about writing a book, about, supporting other people. I have the freedom to do that. But if all I can do is sustain myself and my family because I'm working to keep food on the table and a roof overhead, I can't do that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can't. It's harder to live into your creation and your brilliance. Back to this idea of caste we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
If your job is just to survive, to get up every morning, get that good pension, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah,
taught.
I know. I was going to say, my mother always said to me when I was younger, you just need to go to college and you get a good government job, and 25, 30 years, you'll have a pension.
What?
It was what they knew,
It was
right? I
what?
have to say, my mother's a child of the Depression era. That's what Black folks knew. Get that good government job, get a pension, you'll have some security. I couldn't keep my mouth shut to get a pension someplace in 30 years. Um, but that's what they knew. That's what they taught us.
That's what they knew, and that's what they taught us. And I appreciate it, right? Because it's a helpful perspective.
Yeah.
And I think we're caught. We're the bridging ancestors. We're caught between that generation and the next generation, who's like, live your best life, self care, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I get mad at them because I'm like, oh, boo, like you gotta actually sit down and do this, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at the same time, I admire them, right? Because they're asking for things I never knew to ask for.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that will allow them to tap into the creativity and the brilliance of themselves so that they can build their empires. They can sustain their families and sustain our humanity in a way that's different, that I can't even dream about, right? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, but we have to keep telling ours, and three great kids, all working where they love for the most part. But at some point in time, you're going to want to make sure that your 401k is properly vested.
Uh-huh.
You can't do that can't do that working a gig economy, right? You can't do that necessarily driving unless you have a whole lot of self-discipline. So there's that, discipline, financial literacy thing again coming in. But they expect more. They're asking for more. When mine were younger, I used to say, you got to get out of this entitlement mentality. You're going to have to work. It is great to want to do all of these things, but nobody's going to give it to you.
Yes.
You're going to have to develop a plan and work.
Yes. Which I think implores us to be real advocates for them to have strength of mind and body and spirit and care, right? Because if that's the world that they're going to be a part of, and generationally we're seeing that that's the trend, right? Most kids growing up into adults, we have 5 generations in the workforce right now. I can't believe it, but we've got, right? So we've got all of these conversations happening, and we're stuck in like generation 3, right? Somewhere between generation 3 and 4, and we're like,
well, wait a minute. What are these 5 generations? Because if the oldest generation's the baby boomers, I'm in that Gen 1. Now, I may be the tail end of the boom, but
it's still in the workforce, right?
Yeah, still here.
So there is something around this generational conversation that I think we have to talk about. Like, we have to see ourselves beyond the generation that we're in, make room for the next generation, and be able to see beyond our own tenure on this planet to build the mindsets that will affirm our brilliance over time, so that we can then build the systems and the institutions that will serve us, which have never been, if we're really, candid about it,
right,
have never been.
No, they weren't made for us. The whole topic of equity gets a little heavy sometimes. It can be disheartening when we hear, and I just started pulling together some stuff for some episodes on what's going on in schools right now. There's so much wrong with our institutions. So what I want to ask you to do is to tell us a success story. Make us smile, a transformative moment, something that reminds you of the potential that comes from there being an equitable education and changing a child's life trajectory, so to speak.
Yes. Thank you for asking this. Two thoughts come into mind. I'll share the first. We'll see how we go. So at 7Gen, one of the things that we spend our time doing is thinking about, if we rethought our legacies, how might that shift our conversations? And when our conversations shift, can that shift an action of an entire generation? And we encourage people to think 7 generations forward and think 7 generations back. So what is the progress that has happened millennia in the making to get you to where you are? And then how do you think about that as you move forward as a steward of humanity?
Wow.
Well, in having that conversations with adults, someone found us and asked us to come and teach it to their high school students. Can you start teaching my high school students about legacy? And at first, it's been a while since I've been in the teaching position in a school, right? Like, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. Changed a little bit.
Changed a little bit. I was like, can they have cell phones? Is this like we used to take,
Yeah.
but it's a tool for them, right? And so they're using it. And so eventually we said yes. The moral of the story is yes, we said yes. And so we had the privilege of developing this high school legacy curriculum alongside this school to talk with kids about legacy and how we center our own brilliance as we build our future and as we ask ourselves candid questions about what we want to do and how we want to be and what the difference that we want to make in the world and the impact that we want to have, not just for us, but for the generations to come. And at the end of the project, they built a capstone. It could be anything they wanted, from an album that represented their lifetime to a sculpture. And what they came up with was beautiful. And one of the students said, legacy is about taking into account the people who came before me, my own brilliance, and applying that to the people who will come after me. Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. It's pretty deep for a high school kid too.
A high school senior. Like,
yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you
Brilliance.
spicy,
Brilliance.
Right? Which is like, they're brilliant from zero, right? They know they are watching us and they're waiting for us to open doors for them and conversations and to connect with them. And what got them there was a series of real conversations. One of the assignments was find someone who is 60 years or above and ask them about their life. Ask them to sum up their legacy in 3 words. And one of the students said to us, I never talked to anybody that old.
Now I'm really it's starting to feel a little ancient. Thank you.
I mean, you're wise. You're wise.
Yeah, wise. Yeah.
But the real story is actually like they didn't think to do that, right? Because they were just seeing through their own lens and eyes, and whether they were going to church or not, they were walking past everybody who didn't look or talk like them. And so, the wisdom came actually from the combination of experiences that they had through this project. And then they started asking different questions. And here's the real kicker, which we didn't expect. Because they were asking different questions, their teachers had to start asking them different questions.
Yeah.
And their teachers had to start asking questions that they had never asked themselves. And that created an ecosystem of dialogue around what is my legacy? Why am I here? What am I doing here? What is this assignment doing for the legacy I'm aiming to leave on these 90 children in front of me?
Yeah.
So it was a real beautiful dialogue over the course of, 4 months that we ran the project. And countless adults and children. It was nice to see everybody come together and speak differently to each other.
That is cool.
It was cool.
That is awesome. So I'm going to ask you one more thing. When I sign off to every episode, I paraphrase, I call her the great Dr. Angela Davis. She said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. So I always ask my guests, what is the one thing you cannot accept? And is there something that listeners can do to support changing that?
I cannot accept passivity. We have an opportunity as the bridging generation to do differently and to do right by the ancestors that have laid the path for us. I cannot accept passivity. We have to act in a way that fuels our brilliance.
That's awesome.
We have to do it.
We have to do it. I agree. We have to do it. Can't be passive. Can't just sit around. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today has been the amazing, I'll say incomparable, Shauna Wells. Her contact information, full bio is going to be in the notes, link to the website, everything you need to know and how to contact her. So, Shauna, I want to thank you for this brilliant conversation. And all the listeners out there, our stories and the books that tell them, keep in mind, are being challenged. Our right to literacies, whether it's reading, writing, thinking, or calculating, are being threatened. So now's the time to get in the game. Don't be passive. Make a difference. Show up. Fight for what's right, because your voice does matter. So make it heard where it counts. Get out there, vote in your local elections, from school board to mayor's office, state elections, all of it. Drop by a school board meeting. I tell you that every week. You'd be surprised how much you can change just by being there. And then don't forget to hit me up online, follow the channel, smash that like button, share the word, hit subscribe. Your support makes a difference. So let's stand together and make sure everyone's story is heard. And join me again next week. Connect with me on social. Send me questions, topics, requests to info@askdrbarry.com, and I will answer your questions and bring you experts like the one you enjoyed today to help address those topics. As always, don't worry about the things you cannot change. Change the things you can no longer accept. And I'll see you next time.
That's it for today's episode of the 3E Podcast. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Dr. Barry herself. Be sure to head over to 3epodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Dr. Barry's gift. Then join us on the next episode.